Coming up on the Sarc Fighter podcast, a little bit more about Sarcoidosis Awareness Month, and I'll share a personal story of why this is so important.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello and welcome. This is episode 33 of the Sarc Fighter podcast, brought to you in part by a grant from aTyr Pharma. I am your host, John Carlin. I am a Sarc fighter just like you. Remember, I do this podcast to offer my fellow Sarc fighters hope. And later on in 2021, the effectiveness of a new drug by aTyr will come into clearer view as clinical trials evolved, and I'm staying in touch with the folks at aTyr, and we'll let you know a little bit more about that. In fact, there is some news on that front. I have just received a news release that says that aTyr, which is working on this candidate therapy for pulmonary sarc, which basically means sarcoidosis in the lungs, called aTyr 1923, which I detailed in an earlier podcast. They've now put somebody from the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research on their advocate panel, on their board panel, as a patient advisor, and it's a name you're going to recognize if you follow anything going on with this podcast or with the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, because it's Andrea Wilson who started the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research a little over 20 years ago at her kitchen table with her husband Redding. So this is a wonderful development that we now have Andrea working as a patient advisor for the board of directors with aTyr Pharma, which again is working on a very promising treatment. So let me go back to what we're talking about today. Remember, I do this podcast to offer you hope, and there is that one little nugget I throw out there today. The official Sarc Fighter song is called Zombie by Mark Steyer, who plays in a band called the White Hot Lizards in Alberta, Canada. And you can hear Mark's story because he's a Sarc fighter, in also the story behind the lyrics that he wrote in episode 12. And I tried to sprinkle those lyrics in here and there, and if you listen, it's kind of haunting because what he is telling, the story he is telling, is really in some way a version of what I've heard from every single patient I've interviewed here on the podcast now, going on a little over a year. So that's what the Sarc Fighter podcast is all about. It's a place where we gather. So many people tell me they feel like they're all alone fighting this disease. They don't know anybody else who has it, but you can listen to this in the privacy of your own home or in your car, which is where I think a lot of people listen to podcasts, on your earbuds when you're out for a walk or working out. And it's just a place where you can sort of commune with the sarcoidosis community. And, you know, some of these people have some pretty hard stories to listen to. But, again, I want the prevailing thing to be that there is hope, and that we're raising awareness and we're creating this community, and actually helping to create the community, because so many other people are doing it as well. And this podcast is just a part of that. But I hope it is playing a pivotal role, and many of you have emailed me, and you were nice enough to say that it was. So that's what we're all here to talk about. If you are new to the disease and you're trying to figure out what you have, you might want to consider listening to my interview with Dr. Simon Hart in episode 2. If you want to know more about me, listen to episode 1. If you want to know the backstory as to how the Foundation for Sarc Research came into being, episode 11 with Andrea and Andrea Wilson, whom I just mentioned. And we'll get into today's discussion in just a little bit. In fact, I want to talk more about Sarcoidosis Awareness Month and all the things going on, because it is April, and as I'm recording this, tomorrow, April 13th, is World Sarcoidosis Awareness Day, even though the whole month is Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. But if you've been listening, this comes back to as something that happened to me today that I want to share with you, and it's a little bit personal. I really debated whether I wanted to put this out there, and I think that I will, because it'll serve the greater good, and I've been very upfront and kind of bared my soul, and other people have come on, and I don't feel like I can ask them to do that if I'm not willing to do it. And I still don't know if this is going to result in me having a further diagnosis of Sarc or something else, but that's truly not the point of the story. So very quickly, I have neurosarcoidosis. I was diagnosed after a biopsy in 2016. I had it in all of 2015, I'm sure, because we were chasing the symptoms. I probably had it much longer. And then in 2018, I had a big flare-up that caused me to be hospitalized. But since then, it's been controlled, as far as I know, with a combination of drugs, including Humira and Imuran, also known as azathioprine. And I take Humira once a week, and I take azathioprine every day. But now 4 times this year, and I'm a very active person. I hike, I work out at the YMCA, and I'm back at that now since COVID has relaxed, and I've had my shots, and I ride my bike a lot. In fact, I'm training, hoping to do a 100-mile bike ride later this year, and part of that training yesterday was to ride 50 miles, and I felt fine. I was tired and all of that, as anybody would be, but I didn't have anything related to, in my mind, sarcoidosis. So that's all a good thing. But 4 times this year, I have had blood in my urine, and that is concerning. In fact, a friend of mine, my best friend, is recovering, and he's cancer-free, but he's recovering from bladder cancer, and he had blood in his urine, and he disregarded it for like 3 years. So I said, all right, I'm not going to do that. I went to see a urologist. They did a bunch of tests. They thought everything was fine, but then it happened one more time. So the 4th time came after the last time. So I called the urologist back. She said, okay, well, the protocol now is that we'll do a CAT scan, and then we're going to schedule, right in association with that, a cystoscopy. And so that all happened. The CAT scan happened late last week. It did show something suspicious in my bladder. So today I go in for the cystoscopy, which is where, I'm just going to tell you guys, they put a camera in a part of the male anatomy that is not designed to have a camera. It was not my favorite day of the year. It was, in fact, it was awful, even with the numbing solution. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. But before all of that happened, I sat down with the doctor, who is a urologist, and I said, look, I have sarcoidosis. We talked for about 10 minutes. I told him how sarcoidosis mimics a lot of stuff, including cancer. After all, that's what happened to me back in 2016. I'd had a bunch of MRIs. They found a mass on my spinal cord right in the back of my neck. So they went in to find out what it was. Nobody was looking for sarcoidosis. And so they go in and they do this little biopsy on my spine, and it turned out to be a non-caseating granuloma, or Sarc. And I woke up from that surgery feeling way worse numbness and having way more loss of feeling from my chest down to my toes than I had ever had, caused by the sarcoidosis itself. So the bottom line is the procedure made it worse. They nicked something, they did something, and I'm not saying that maybe they didn't need to do that, but something happened during that procedure. And maybe, just maybe, if they were looking for Sarc, or if Sarc was something that was on their radar, they might have taken a different approach, might not have done the biopsy at all. I don't know. I don't know how they would have known what it was just by looking at the MRI, because everybody who looked at it thought that it was some sort of cancer or a tumor of benign, whatever. Something was on my spinal cord that shouldn't have been there. And I really wish that they had been thinking about sarcoidosis. So today, I now have an image result on a CAT scan that says, something doesn't look right here, could be a tumor. Now they're going to go in and they're going to look at it. And they're not operating on me, they're going in to look at it. So I said to the doctor, look, have you ever heard of sarcoidosis? Now, this is an experienced middle-aged doctor, I would say late 40s, early 50s, easy. He's done thousands of these. Never heard of sarcoidosis in the bladder. Never seen it. Can't say he's never heard of it, but he had no familiarity with it. So I told him about everything I just told you, and I told him that, look, when you're in there, I know what you are expecting to see because that's what you usually see, and you are a doctor who goes in and looks for polyps or looks for cancer, and you've got a CAT scan that's telling you that's what to look for. And so when you see it, I don't want you to see sarcoidosis but believe you saw something else. I just want you to be aware of it. Will you humor me with this? And he said, oh, yes, of course I will. But he said, honestly, I've never seen it in a patient. We've never had to treat it. I think it's extremely unlikely. And I was Googling around a lot, and of course it is extremely unlikely, but sarcoidosis is extremely unlikely, and I think it's something like 1% of sarcoidosis patients will see it in their bladder. And yet I've had people on this very podcast who have it it's involved in many organs, including their bladder. So it's not unheard of to me. So, and if you Google sarcoidosis in bladder, you get all kinds of hits. And there's a lot of people who've talked about it on the Inspire thread. And then I read some studies. And so there's a number of hits. And they always say, yes, it mimics cancer. So the doctor was skeptical. After the scan, he told me that it looked like the polyp that he saw, which he did see, and he was able to show it to me on the screen. So he's sitting there with this camera up inside me, and I'm wide awake, and he's showing me, okay, here's the wall of your bladder, and here's the polyp, and this is what we see all the time. I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks like what we see, which is normally a cancerous tumor, but also a very low-risk cancerous tumor, and something that is easily controlled. No need for chemo, no need for radiation. He said, we'll go in, we'll take this thing out, and we're going to do it in a couple of weeks. We'll take this thing out, and you will be good to go, and we'll just keep an eye on things, and you should be fine. And he said he didn't know if it was a non-casein granuloma or if it was something that was cancerous, so to speak, or benign. But he said no matter what it is, it's got to come out of there because you've had bleeding, and so we want to get your bladder back to normal. Okay, so the bottom line is number one, don't worry about me because I think that I'm going to be fine regardless of what this is. I got to tell you, I would almost rather that it be a polyp or something that is a quote-unquote tumor that they can remove and get rid of it, because I don't want to go on prednisone again. And if it comes back, because they did do a snippet and they are going to test it, and if it comes back as sarcoidosis, then that would mean to me sarcoidosis is active in my body again. And I don't want that. Honestly, it's been controlled. I haven't had any additional issues with the one on my spinal cord, but I don't want to go back on prednisone, and I don't want to reinvent my treatment regimen and start going through all that again. I'd rather go in, have this arthroscopic surgery, have them take this thing out, and go on with my life, honestly. And if the doctor called me back and he said, guess what, you were right, it is sarcoidosis, never seen that before, and we're going to put you on 60 milligrams of prednisone immediately, and then I have to contact my doctors at the Cleveland Clinic and get everybody on board, and then I have to travel 7 hours to Cleveland, and blah, 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 and so it goes. Which, on the one hand, yeah, first world problems, I'm glad I have those answers. On the other hand, I would rather that this thing just is something that they can take off and it goes away. All right, and then we know about it, so we can keep an eye on it. So, but the takeaway is that even in my experienced doctor that I had this morning, I just met him for the first time this morning. The takeaway is that he's not looking for sarcoidosis. He's not familiar with sarcoidosis. and he really wouldn't know what to do with sarcoidosis. Fortunately, I do. I have in my mind the best doctors in the world at the Cleveland Clinic working with me, so we would just volley all of this up to Cleveland and figure out what to do next. But here I am on the eve of Sarcoidosis Awareness Day, where our job as advocates with FSR and as patients and as Sarc fighters or Sarc warriors, whatever you want to call us, our job right now is to raise the roof and let everybody know about sarcoidosis. And so I think it would be irresponsible of me not to, here on the eve of Awareness Day, to let everybody know about that and to tell everybody about all the different things happening this month with respect to Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. And so I'm going to do that here before we get through this podcast. In fact, this is a good time to tell you that last week I did have this bonus edition of the podcast with Tricia Shivas from the Foundation of Sarcoidosis Research. And I wanted to get that on as early in April as I could so you could get up to speed on Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. And Tricia did a great job laying it all out. And she is the person in many respects who is behind most of these initiatives. So if you are looking for more on Sarc Awareness Month, I would say go ahead and just pause right now and go back and listen to last week's episode. I want to pick up, though, and tell you a little bit about the diet that I've been working on. If you've been listening, you know that I'm doing something called the Elimination Diet, which is where you take out all the potential things that can cause inflammation in your body that come from your diet, and then you figure out what's going on. So how do you figure out what is causing inflammation, if anything, that's coming from the food you eat? Well, dietitians know that there are certain foods that create an inflammatory response in your body. A guy I know who works in a hospital but is not a doctor, but he is literally a nuclear physicist, says, look, everything causes inflammation at some level. Okay, take that for what it's worth. But there are those foods that are worse, and the biggest culprits tend to be dairy, gluten, and sugar. So I decided that I would go on this diet, and I would take all of those things out, I would eliminate them. And then you live that way for 3 weeks, 21 days, and then gradually you start adding things back. So, and I've talked about this on the podcast here quite a lot. I have now added back like bananas, I've added back apples, dates, raisins, those types of things, because they have a lot of sugar in them. And then actually just this morning, I added back eggs, and I had a couple of strips of bacon. So far, so good. The question will be, does it disrupt my sleep? Does it make me feel irritable later on tonight or tomorrow morning? Who knows? But I haven't had like dairy. I haven't had a big chunk of cheese yet. I've been eating a lot of salads, a lot of grass-fed beef, a lot of salmon, drinking a lot of kale smoothies. But now the weather is getting better. The family's starting to get together. We're having outings. As I told you, I'm doing these bike rides, and you've got to fuel for a bike ride like that. So you don't go out and ride for 4 hours on an empty stomach, or literally on a kale smoothie, even with a healthy dose of protein powder. So I've started putting things like bananas and so forth in there, and I do carry something called a Lara bar, L-A-R-A, Lara bar, which is an energy bar, but it's made with dates. So I still haven't had that big dose of sugar yet. Well, I take that back, because I did have a slice of cake when life got complicated at a birthday party last weekend, and I think I detailed that. But anyway, for the most part, I've been good, 95% good. How's that? And I'm slowly adding these things back in. And I got to admit that I walked right past a plate of cookies after the bike ride yesterday. Did not have one. Thank you. Plus factor for John, right? But man, did I want one of those chocolate chip cookies. It looked so good, but I didn't do it. But if that means never having to have another flare, it might be worth it. And overall, what you're doing is you're working to establish a healthy microbiome. which is a fancy way of talking about all the bacteria in your gut. But that's where serotonin is generated. And serotonin is what governs your moods, literally your happiness. And if you get that under control, you could live a much happier life. You could be less prone to depression. You could just be approaching everything in a much more optimistic fashion, and just things wouldn't rub you the wrong way as easily, which tends to happen with me. And then I get mad at people, and then I shut down, and it's just a vicious cycle. So if eating better can fix that as well as the sarcoidosis, well, then so be it. So I've been coached by Lindsay Norenberg, who runs Nourish by Lindsay, and there's a link to Nourish by Lindsay in the show notes. And she got into eating a clean diet because of her husband, Sarc fighter Ryan Norenberg, had success battling Sarc by taking inflammatory foods out of his life, and he had very serious cardiac sarcoidosis. So she became a nutritionist. She's coaching me for free. I'll just put that out there, but I am her first client, so I've agreed to be the guinea pig. I'm the first person who is not a member of her family. But she is now open for business. She is accepting clients, and I've asked her to come on the podcast to take a deeper dive, and she will be coming on before the end of the month. It may be as soon as the next podcast out. It depends upon how things go with Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. But Lindsay will be on the podcast very soon. And she goes beyond best practices. Like, I can tell you, don't eat gluten, don't eat sugar, don't eat dairy. She can tell you why, and she can tell you how, and she can tell you how all those things impact what's going on in your body. I can't. I could repeat back some of what she said. I'd probably get it wrong, but she makes it very easy to understand and explains to you what's going on with those things and why they're bad for your body and why they can cause inflammation. And so I thought, rather than me do it, I'm talking about this diet all the time, I'll just have Lindsay come on. So that will be coming up. But coming up right after the break, we'll have more on how you can participate in Sarcoidosis Awareness Month and how to be on this podcast. Again, that's coming up.
Just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back. And I want to talk about Sarcoidosis Awareness Month, which of course is April, and it's got a lot going on, and the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research is really pushing out, in my mind, what is a great agenda for Sarc Awareness Month. And they've got some suggestions for how you can participate in the month. And I just want to pass some of those on to you. First of all, they say join our community. And that's a great idea because you get an email, you get the monthly newsletter, and it tells you all the latest things going on with FSR research, educational support programs, and I will put a link on how to join the community in the show notes. But that's the first thing you need to do. The next thing you can do, which is super important, is to share your story. And that's what people have done here on the podcast. And I am now looking for some patients to help me round out my lineup for 2021. So contact me at carlinagency@gmail.com, and I need for some more people to come on and to share what's happened with you, your diagnosis, your misdiagnosis, how sarcoidosis is impacting your life. And so please contact me. The email is in the show notes, and we will talk. And if it is something that we agree will further the needs of the body of sarcoidosis patients at large, and I'll have you on the podcast. And believe me, that's a pretty low threshold. I'm trying to get as many voices out there as I can. But even if you don't want to be on the podcast, if that's intimidating for some reason, literally, if you have a computer, it's just a Zoom call. So it's very easy. But share your story on social media. Tell your friends and family that it's Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. And in just a minute, I'm going to tell you how they've made it really easy to give you a visible way on your Facebook page to do that. But let people know so more people are aware, like the doctor that I just talked about sarcoidosis. Then the other thing you can do, participate in the educational programs, and there's a whole lot of educational, wellness, social engagement programs that the foundation is putting out. Of course, there's World Sarcoidosis Day, the celebration, and I'll have a link to that. But at 4 p.m. Central Time, there's an actual celebration, and you can click that link and participate in that. They're putting out something called Fostering Growth and Resilience, and that'll be Saturday, April 17th at 11 a.m. Central Time. Cooking and nutrition, there it is. So looking for those anti-inflammatory foods, there's going to be a class on that on Saturday, April 17th at 1 p.m. Central. There's a whole wellness series, Pain and Fatigue in People Living with Sarcoidosis. And that's what I hear from every single person that comes on the podcast. If it's not pain and fatigue, it is pain or fatigue. And, we've all suffered from some version of that. So you can click on that link for Saturday, April 24th. Memorial Monday Candlelight Vigil will be the 26th. And then coming up on the 27th at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, I want to let you know I'll be hosting a town hall on sarcoidosis in steroids, because the number one treatment for sarcoidosis, as you may know, is prednisone. And prednisone tends to work, but it has terrible side effects. You've heard me parrot what I heard somebody else called prednisone last year, the devil's Tic Tacs. It's kind of what they look like, is Tic Tacs, the little minty candies. And they make you feel better, but son of a gun, the side effects, the big puffy moon face, the weight gain, the irritability. So they're doing a whole seminar on that, and I think I'm the poster boy for steroids. I'll tell you what, because I blew up like a hot air balloon. I'll tell you what. So that is something that I'll be talking about with our panel of experts, and that's coming up on April 27th, including Sanjay Shukla from Atar Pharma. So, and one of the things that Atar is trying to do is come up with a medicine that will spare you the use of those steroids. So maybe we'll have a real good reason for hope, but I hope you'll join in with me on that. And that is Tuesday, April 27th at 11 a.m. There is something called the Steps for Sarc Virtual Challenge. So that's going on all month. Basically, you go out and you walk whatever amount of walking you want or plan to do. And you promise, just like, running a 5K and raising money. Well, now it's a virtual challenge, and you can go out and walk. You can run if you want to, if you can. But go out and do some exercise for sarcoidosis. Post that on your social media. And then when you go through this Steps for Sarc virtual challenge, which is on the FSR website, they make it very easy. You go in, you sign up, you put your name up, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got access to graphics and anything you could want to post on Facebook or Instagram or your social media. And it even gives you a little thermometer. So if my goal, for instance, is $300 and I'm at about $250, so it shows you a thermometer how close you are to your goal. And by the way, if you don't want to go through all that, I gladly will accept your money on behalf of the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. And then once again, don't forget World Sarcoidosis Day. And there is a whole series of badges. I told you I would do this. So you can update your Facebook profile. And what they have is a little circle that says April is Sarcoidosis Awareness Month with the purple ribbon that we've all seen. And you just take whatever picture you have right now for your Facebook page and you add it to this. It's just a couple of clicks. And boom, you have something you can put on your Facebook page. So every time somebody sees your Facebook profile picture, it now has a little kind of colorful purple stamp on it that says April is Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. And then they have created social media graphics, and there's what they're calling a social media toolkit. And you just go to the FSR website, that's stopsarcoidosis.org/awareness, and scroll down, and then there's a button that says Get the Toolkit. And it will give you all these nice little sort of pre-made graphics, and you just sort of add whatever you want to it, or you can just take them as they are. So one is a reminder that April is National Sarc Awareness Month. Another one has a picture behind that. Another one kind of shows the pictures I see from my fellow Sarc fighters on Instagram, kind of a nice picture with a woman walking on a dirt road. And it tells you that about the Awareness Month, and it says to learn more and get involved, stopsarcoidosis.org. So there's all these different things that you can put out there, and it just makes it really easy. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you don't have to just put a post up that looks like regular text reminding people it's Sarcoidosis Awareness Day or month. There's also a merch store. There's mugs, hats, T-shirts, masks. Did I say masks? So you can go to the Sarc store and buy that. And then there's a virtual candlelight vigil on Monday, April 26th from 5 to 6 Central Standard Time. And there's a special candle with the purple labeling on it. And you would buy this candle. Of course, the proceeds go to FSR. And you can purchase a candle, and you visit the Sense of Adventure website, pre-order the candle right away. And from what I understand, this candle does not have any scent to it, because that's something that triggers sarcoidosis flare-ups in some people is the sense of smell. And then also there's something called the Wausau Centers of Excellence, and the Cleveland Clinic is hosting an understanding of sarcoidosis WebEx on Tuesday, April 13th at 5 p.m., which is a free live online presentation. Sarcoidosis patients and their loved ones can register at clevelandclinic.org/sarcoidosis awareness, all one word. I'll put that link in the show notes. Then the Cleveland Clinic's Terminal Tower Light Up is Tuesday, April 13th. Terminal Tower will light up to purple to honor Sarcoidosis Awareness Day, and they'll have some photos of that. And there's just a whole lot more going on, and you can scroll down this page. FSR on-demand educational resources. There's the patient registry, which I have done. So you just go in and you register, and you basically let doctors know and researchers by sharing your experience. It's about a 30-minute survey, and I went in and just put my name in it, filled it out, put it out there, because science needs to know how many of us are affected and who's affected, and that's one of the ways they do it. So go to the FSR patient registry and do that. There's a sarcoidosis treatment guide, a PDF that you can download. There are support groups. There's something called the Physician Finder. And man, I've interviewed some people, even in populated states like New Jersey, who've had a hard time, especially in southern New Jersey, finding a doctor that specializes in sarcoidosis. So that's one of the things that the foundation does. There is a wonderful online support community where you can connect with literally over 45,000 sarcoidosis patients worldwide in a safe and anonymous forum. So, and then there's all kinds of media, and I am just tickled to death that when you go underneath media on the website, that the Sarc Fighter podcast has now been added to it. So guess what? We qualify as media. And a year ago, a little over a year ago, it was February of 2020, when we launched this podcast. I had no idea that it would take off the way it has, and that it would be something that really has helped the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, and the Foundation in turn has helped me find the right resources to bring you valuable information. So that has really been super. So that's just a look at some of the things that are going on with Sarcoidosis Awareness Month. Now, again, no guest this week. I had a guest last week. I am looking to line up some more guests, so please email me, carlinagency@gmail.com. Remember, I am participating in the Steps for Sarc campaign, and I'm still under my $300 goal. So please, you might want to stop by and make a donation if you don't want to just do that yourself. Follow The Sarc Fighter with the word "the" in front of Sarc Fighter on Instagram and Sarc Fighter on Facebook. And I do post as often as I can. You can follow along with my life, follow along with my guests, updates on the podcast, that sort of thing. And I'd so much appreciate your interest in this podcast. It helps me reach more people, and it will help me grow the show if you share it on your social media. And if you like it, if you like this podcast, if it's something you find helpful or valuable, if you would share it with just one person, I would really appreciate that. If you go to Apple Podcasts, you might want to give it a review. A 5-star review would be super helpful. And anyway, I will let you know about the progress with my diet. We've got Lindsay Norenberg coming up in a future podcast. And if you're interested in being on the show and you're a patient or maybe a caregiver, but if you have something to say about sarcoidosis, then I want to hear from you for sure. Okay? That's all for this time. Until next time, keep fighting.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling. Easier to grieve if I had a breath to breathe. I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling. Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking, counting down his days. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. There was potential slipping gone. It feels too but find a way to try and adapt your life. It's not the why, but the how that plagues my mind. A new perspective, appreciate what you've got. We're dead men walking, in an instant it could be gone. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. There was potential slipping. Wherever there is happiness, fight to be there too. And wherever there are friendly smiles, try hard to smile too. And wherever there is sunshine, don't let fear darken you.